And welcome everybody to God's Views on Political News. It's so great to have you back here today. Bill, did you go through 12 feet of snow to get here today on this show?
No, I didn't go through 12 foot of snow. Went through probably none. And we had snow on the deck and and on the this, that, and the other, and the roof and all, but it pretty much had disappeared by the time I got on the road. So I was glad about that. They had thought we might get a little bit more, but apparently it didn't come as far south as some were thinking, which I was glad because it's only November 12th. It's much too early for snow.
But I don't think it's over with yet, so you could still get more snow and ice and all that stuff.
Don't say that. It's not even Thanksgiving yet. I mean, it's going to be in the morning. It's going to be 17 degrees at my house, and that is far too cold this early in the season.
That's far too cold any time of the season.
Yeah. Well, just over a month ago, I mean, the beginning of October, I mean, it was in the mid-90s. And so here we are 6 weeks later, and it's, dipping down into the teens. That's just like we went from summer to winter.
So I won't tell you about the shorts I'm wearing. We'll just go on to say, hi, Dawn. Good to see you. Hey, Margie. Margie said it's snowing in Jersey right now, and she can't stay long because she has to go to work. But we're glad that you're here. And Ravel Prayer says, hi, guys. Jonathan says, shalom. Tammy says hi, everybody coming in. Good to see everybody. Hope everything is working for you on Periscope and all the other places that we have. Good morning, Kathy. Good morning, Bill and Susan from Washington State. I bet it's not that cold there.
Depends on where.
Yeah, that's true.
They have some mountains up there, so who knows?
I guess what's going to happen today is going to be probably, Darlene said it's freezing here. It's kind of freezing here when I get out of the pool. I have to, get a towel right away. So. So good morning, Janice. Janice is from Oklahoma. It's good to see everybody. We hope that you stay warm, and we hope you'll stay warm during the show as you're watching. Good afternoon from Portugal. Deb, good to see you.
Wow,
Portugal, very cool. I bet it's nice there. Probably not snowing. I don't know. But I'm just guessing.
I don't know.
59 and rainy here in North Carolina. It's freezing here, and 3 inches of snow in Kentucky. Robin said. So
that's why I live in Tennessee.
That's why I live in California, to be honest with you. Good morning to you. Shalom, Linda. All right, so let's get started. We have a lot to talk about today. A lot going on. There's before we get started, there's a lot going on in Israel. I don't know if you've heard what's going on at the Gaza Strip.
No. Tell me what's going on.
Well, there's a lot going on. Let me kind of look at my notes. I talked about this earlier. The IDF targeted Islamic Jihad commander. And I'm giving you his name in the Gaza. His name is Baha Abu al-Atta.
Say that fast 3 times.
Yeah, I know. I like it. Baha. Okay. He was directly responsible for hundreds of terror attacks against Israeli civilians and soldiers. His next attack was imminent. So they have, he's dead now. He's no longer with us. They killed a notorious Palestinian terrorist. That's who he is. And Palestine was very angry about that. And they have been 9 hours of incessant rocket fire from Gaza targeting Israeli civilians. And earlier today, there was a tape of, the rockets are dropping right on the roads as people are trying to get to work in Israel, dropping right on the roads. And so far, I think they've had some injuries and again, targeting some civilians. But it's not looking good. But Netanyahu says basically we've swiftly deployed fighter jets to target the Palestinians, launching the rockets. Terrorists think they can hit civilians and hide behind civilians. We showed them that we can hit the terrorists with minimal damage to civilians. Anyone who thinks they can hit our civilians and get away with it is wrong. So good for them.
Yeah, they'll probably, catch heck from the UN and all the European nations and all the left-wing people here for doing that because they're killing civilians, they'll say. But they don't think anything about what all, those rockets and where they're coming from. That's one thing, Ariel Sharon, he didn't think this thing through with the Gaza.
I know.
At least it seems to me. So it's
a lot of chaos going on in the world.
Well, we won't go too far off into this right now, but there are a lot of prophecies about what happens to Gaza, in the end.
Give us one prophecy. Go ahead, Bill. We like this.
Well, it's just that, Hamas, of course, is based in Gaza. And it was, from what I understand, was even conceived in Gaza. So when it comes to what happens to the house of Edom, the Edomites, those are, according to Ezekiel 36, those are the people who are claiming the mountains of Israel to be theirs. They're saying that they're claiming two nations to be their one nation, that is the Edomites. And there's a couple of prophecies about Gaza and how that in this war that I believe, this is Bill's opinion, precedes the war of Ezekiel 38:9, things happen to Gaza. And so, Hamas, as long as they're there are going to be these rocket attacks. There's going to be this, indiscriminate murder of innocent men, women, and children. They don't care who dies. They just want to send some rockets up and kill somebody. It's just going to be that way until the Israelis decide we've had enough. And we don't care what the world thinks, and we've just had enough. Now, mind you, there's probably some good people, people who are just trying to raise a family that are trapped in the Gaza Strip because of Hamas and these kinds of people. And yet they elected these people to rule them, or they were, not.
Maybe they were forced into electing them.
I was trying to think of the right way to put it. They felt forced.
Coerced.
They felt coerced and forced, manipulated, threatened, and that's why they voted for these people. But then, there comes a time, it seems to me, you just have to rise up. You have to do something. And I, like I said, I didn't want to get too far off into that. However, it's shaping up for a climactic battle, so to speak, in Gaza.
Yeah.
And now here's just a sidebar to that. Okay. All right, you have to follow me on this. The so-called territories, the world calls it the West Bank, but the so-called territories, in Hebrew it's called Yesha. And it's an acrostic. I always get acronym and acrostic mixed up, but it's for Yehuda, or Judea, Shomron, which is Samaria, and Gaza, which is, we say Gaza. All right, so here's the thing. Yesha, if you're going to talk about the territories, you would say Judea, Samaria, and Gaza. And as an acrostic in Hebrew, that would be Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin. And it just so happens that Yud, Shin, Vav, Ayin spells the name Yeshua.
No.
Okay? All right, here's the thing that's missing. Gaza is missing. That's the Ayin. And so they don't see Yeshua as the Savior, the Redeemer, the King. They see him as Yeshu. They see him as something that should be, he's a blasphemer. That's the way they regard him. And I'm talking about religious Jews. They see Yeshua, the Messiah, as a blasphemer. May his name be blotted out, is what they say. And they call him Yeshu, which is Yud Shin Vav. It's missing the ayin. So here's my point. When the Gaza comes back under Israeli control, I will predict it will be at a time when more and more Jewish people are beginning to see the true identity of the King, the Messiah, the Redeemer, as Yeshua. Did you catch all that? Do you understand what I'm going with that?
I did, yeah.
So there's a spiritual battle going on behind the scenes, as we all know. And it has to do really with the restoration of Israel in the kingdom of Israel and the revealing of the Messiah to his people. And so Gaza plays a very important role in that.
Now, Julie said her in-laws are in Jerusalem, so please pray for them today. Jonathan says signs of the times are all around us. People get ready for the greater exodus. They hide behind innocent people, Deb said. I believe that it will be there till the Lord returns, Tammy said. Watching from South Haven, Mississippi, I think.
South Haven, yeah. Just south of Memphis.
And our God is still on the throne and will come when he knows the time is right. Hamas elected in 2006. Funny, no elections since then.
Yeah.
So funny, not funny, right? So, well, speaking of the spiritual battle, let's kind of turn and we're going to go back to the Middle East, but let's kind of turn to what we're dealing with here in the spiritual battle. As you know, starting this week, starting tomorrow, as a matter of fact, we're going to see the circus start up again with the impeachment inquiry. I've never seen in my lifetime a bigger farce than what we are seeing right now. Something that has absolutely no ethical, moral, or legal backing to it whatsoever. And that's what the Democrats are doing in the House with this impeachment inquiry.
I agreed. It's a zoo, it's a circus, it's lawless, and why Republicans in the Senate are not countering in some way. Maybe they're getting something together that we don't know about, but why they're not countering, I'm not sure. It's frustrating. But they complain a lot, they go to the cameras a lot, they complain. Right. So far, I don't really see anything happening.
Now, I've heard rumors that maybe they're starting to investigate some things, but, we'll see. Because they, like you said, they go to the cameras. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And Lindsey Graham said, if it comes to this impeachment inquiry goes from the House and it comes over to the Senate without the whistleblower being interviewed and without, let's see, Biden being interviewed, then it's going to be dead on arrival. I wish I had as much confidence in the Senate as Lindsey Graham does, because I'm not that, secure about
it. I do tend to believe it'll probably be a moot point. They'll impeach. I think that's the given at this point. They've gone too far to turn back now. And they know that most likely it's going to be acquitted in the Senate and Trump stays in office. It just is bothersome to me that the people who are supposedly on our side complain to the cameras, but they don't really take any action, at least not that I have seen, other than a few smattering of congressmen, in the House who, went into these private hearings, and you got Jim Jordan being moved over to this committee that's part of this impeachment inquiry, and I think that was. It seems that might have been a really good move. He seems to be a mover and shaker. We'll see. But really, other than that, just not a whole lot, and it just seems that the Democrats are being allowed to do whatever they want to do. I mean. Did I hear correctly that Adam Schiff has rejected every one of the people, the names that the Republicans wanted to call for witnesses? He rejected each and every one, is what I heard.
Mm-hmm. That's what Devin Nunes said last night. So as of last night, every single one that we had wanted, and we'd wanted, the Nellie Orr was one, Hunter Biden was one, the whistleblower, of course. I mean, you can't. This is what started everything. So started everything was the whistleblower. You can't have in a world that's rational. You can't have a hearing without the main person that started it. Right. It just doesn't make sense.
So the accuser gets to just slip out the back door and not be seen or heard from again. That is an unjust weight. And that's what the Bible calls an unjust weight. Things aren't balanced, things aren't even. And that's an abomination to the Creator. That's one of the things he says is an abomination. And this is exactly what we've got going on. So my suspicions are that given the seeming unwillingness on the Republican side to really mount an opposition to this, and again, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt to some degree. Maybe there's something that they're not, revealing, and maybe the White House has signaled that they want to kind of keep, what they've got going on to wraps. I don't know. I'm speculating, but my suspicion is that whether it happens on my timeline or in yours or not, my suspicion is that, again, the Creator is just letting all this stuff, letting everybody see what's going on, and then, he's going to step in at some point, and he's going to do something. All these people that are acting in this unjust way are going to have that come back on them. And how, when, I certainly won't pretend to know, but it will happen.
It will happen. Now let's look at tweet number 1, what Kevin McCarthy has to say. Basically, this is what the whole thing is, and what Adam Schiff is doing. Here's Adam Schiff's idea of open hearings. The president's counsel is not allowed to participate. Schiff controls how the ranking member, Devin Nunes, can spend his questioning time. The minority party is denied equal rights to call witnesses and subpoena the documents. I mean, does that sound like anything that you or I or any American deserves to have happen to them? This is, you look at that and it's like, is this really America? Because it doesn't sound like
this is Stalin-esque. This is this is Hitler's kangaroo courts. That's exactly what it is. And which is odd because that side likes to call people like you and me Nazis.
Exactly.
They go and march into Ben Shapiro's lecture and call him a Nazi, even as he's talking about Nazis. So, but that's what the Esau spirit does. That's what this antagonistic spirit toward God's purpose does. It accuses others of what they themselves are guilty of. So Schiff is running something Stalin would be very proud of. And one day, he's going to answer to that.
Now, Jen Westphal said exactly. There are a few Republicans who seem to be upset, but for the most part, they're just silent. Aussie Nick said it won't get anywhere in the Senate, all just a dim propaganda media circus until their arrests, he said.
Well.
And the whistleblower didn't directly witness anything, and that's true. That was all hearsay. Yeah. And God will use it for his glory, Linda said. Dems are doing what they are doing because they are losing. This will make their losing worse, Greg said.
Well, let's hope
Arkansas,
so.
Dan said. Yeah, let's hope
let's
so.
Let's hope
so. There's got to be, I keep asking God, when are we going to see some justice here in the United States? Are we going to see, some justice in the United States? Because we haven't seen any yet on the Republican side.
The other day I was having a conversation with someone, and it was a totally different topic, nothing even closely related to this, but it was a passage from Revelation chapter 6, I believe it was. And it's these people who have been martyred, and they are calling out to God, how long, O Lord, before you avenge us? And, to put it this way, how long before you render justice?
Right.
And he tells them that, look, you need to rest. I got this. I've got it. I'm going to take care of it. So I think we could apply the principle here. It may not happen when you and I want it to. It may not happen the way we want it to. But these people that are acting so unjustly, and for what reasons? Power, greed, probably. There's probably things they're tied up in. I don't know that I'd be shocked at this point, but I think a lot of people would be shocked to find out what a lot of these people are tied up in and what they're trying to really cover up here. So, but there comes a time when God says, you know what, time's up. There's another passage in Scripture, and I know I'm jumping all over the place today, but there's another passage in Scripture when God's talking to Abraham, and this is in Genesis chapter 15, and he's talking about how I'm going to raise up a seed, and you're going to have a son, and I'm going to make your name great, and I'm going to make you a great nation, and I'm going to give this land to you. Now your descendants are going to go and serve a different country for a while, and after this much time, they're going to come back into this land. And he says this, and this is my point. He says, in a manner of speaking, it can't happen yet because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. And so there's this idea that God gives nations, he gives people, he gives individuals a time. He gives them an allowed time, and when that cup of iniquity is full and it starts spilling over, time's up. Now, nobody knows when that is,
Yeah.
But when that cup is filled and it starts spilling over, that's when God steps in. So at the rate the Democrats are going, I'd say they're filling that cup up pretty quickly.
Pretty fast.
Now,
Jonathan said he's calling us to repent so he can act. And then Julie said so many Christians are just being deceived.
Well, I agree with that. We had something on the show last week, with Joshua Harris, who's this megachurch pastor who's obviously very deceived, and there's so many others.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's look at tweet number 2. This is Jim Jordan. This is who you were talking about and who's going to go over to that committee. Basically, it says that Republicans only have till Saturday, this was last Saturday, to request witnesses for all open hearings. The Adam Schiff decides which witnesses are testifying, if any. Schiff decides when the witnesses will testify, if at all. President's counsel still excluded. Does this sound like due process? And, you have to know, again, we've just been talking, there's no way that this is due process. It would be laughable if it weren't true and weren't happening, in our Congress.
Taking, and this is going to come out the wrong way, but just taking the God part of this and setting it aside for a moment, just looking at it politically, socially, just
secularly.
Yeah, fair. Just, being fair. I mean, I would think that the majority of people, I wouldn't say all people because some people are crazy, but the majority of people would see this, even if you don't like the president, and say, this isn't right. You've got people like Alan Dershowitz, who has not really been a friend to conservatism, if you will. I mean, he's kind of always been on the left and on the liberal side of things, but you've even got people like Alan Dershowitz who are coming out and saying, this is not right. This is, I think he related it to something Stalin would be proud of.
Yeah, he did.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I would hope that most people would see that this is blatantly and obviously unfair, unjust. It smacks of cover-up on their side. And obviously, and we've talked about this many times before, if they know that chances are this is dead in the water once it gets to the Senate, then what's the game plan here? It's to keep it lingering in the minds of people and plant the seed in their minds that Trump did something illegal, he deserves to be removed from office, et cetera, and with the hopes that come election next year, we've got less than a year now, if we can keep this thing kind of going on, that come November we pull an upset. Maybe there's some other tentacle of this that they've got up their sleeves. I don't know, but it just seems to me that that's what's going on here, and thus, no, we're not going to really allow open hearings. We're not going to let them bring witnesses that might bring this thing to a close today.
A fast, yeah,
You're right.
exactly.
We're not going to allow that. We've got to kick this thing, and we're going to take the chance that people are going to label us as unjust and unfair, because really the end justifies the means, doesn't it? So.
Well, the way I look at it, what they want to do is they want to be able to go into the debates and say, you were impeached in the House. Yeah. And so you're a crook and you're this and that and the other. So it makes their candidate look good. And at the same time, if the American public can hear all the way through the debates that this president was impeached in the House. They don't care about right and wrong. That doesn't matter. The end goal is to impeach this president. And they're going to probably get all the Democrats in the House to go along with that, and shame on them, that they do, if they do something like that. Now, Dawn Schultz said the criminals in the Democratic Party should be arrested, and I won't tell you the rest of what she said, something about a tree. And then, Shalom said, how can they get away with this? And it will be seen for the unfair sham process that it is, Aussie Nick said. I think a lot of people are awake and realize it. A lot of people are awake and don't care that it is a sham.
I agree with that. There are people who, it's like these guys that go out on the street, and they, in your neck of the woods out there in the beach area around Santa Monica and what is that, Venice, Venice Beach and all that, and they interview all these 20 and 30 somethings, should Trump be impeached? Absolutely, he should be impeached. What for? Oh, the hell, I don't know. There are people who are just that way. And those are the people that are ripe for a master. And by that I mean a dictator, a tyrant, a despot.
An Antichrist. Sorry, just had to throw that in.
Well, it is. It's the same thing. The Antichrist is the ultimate despot and tyrant. But yes, that's what it is. George Washington, and I can't quote this verbatim because I don't remember it exactly, but now, a lot of people don't know that George Washington, in his first inaugural address, he left out parts of his speech, and they found letters many decades later. They found letters where he had just omitted that, but he'd kept the letters. And in part of what was going to be his first inaugural speech, he had made this statement, a paraphrase, that this country would continue until the people of this country became like Esau and were willing to trade the birthright of a free man for a mess of pottage. In other words, we will give away our liberty, we will give away our sovereignty as an individual to someone who will give us what we want when we want it. They'll satisfy our appetites. And that's what we've got going on here. People are We want what we want. We're led astray by the media and these things, and we have our appetites and we have all our desires. And boundaries, we don't want boundaries. We don't want anybody telling us this is right and this is wrong. We want to be able to do whatever it is we want to do. And so when somebody comes along and like Trump and starts talking about boundaries and borders and we need to have laws that are enforced, that just flies in their face. And so they want this kind of thing removed. I believe that's really what's going on here. And are willing to accept a tyrant. They call it socialism today. But socialism is just a hop, skip, and a jump from Marxism, from communism, and from totalitarianism. And that's what they're really asking for.
Well, and, you know, when you look at some of the, last night I read the transcript from Laura Cooper, who was a person from the Pentagon, who they released her transcript yesterday with a lot of headlines of saying, Laura Cooper testifies about how the funds were withheld from Ukraine. What they didn't go on and tell you is the missing piece, because basically what she was saying was the president they got an email. She got an email from her boss saying there's some questions about this. One, who's helping other than the United States? You know, are we using our equipment? Are we using somebody else's equipment? Is anybody else going to be responsible? And who gave this funding? Okay, you know, who agreed to this? And then later on, it was kind of you know, we're looking at this, and the president has some questions about the corruption going on. Very legitimate and responsible things that he was asking, according to her testimony, not going to get reported, not going to be seen. She's probably not going to be brought into the hearing for questioning, because she's not coming out and saying anything that would be a total detriment to the president, but they're running it through the mainstream media as if what she said was negative, and it really wasn't.
Half-truths are the worst type of lies, you know, because it has that little bit of credibility, you know, it seems that way. And yet, you know, just what you just demonstrated, they leave some very important information out of that, so it sounds one way. So, you know, when Trump first said this, I kind of hesitated to jump on board and agree. But I have to admit that as time has gone on here, it has been proven that the majority of the press is the enemy of the people.
Yes, it's true.
Not the right to a free press, mind you.
Right.
Not that. But the press as it exists today has become an enemy of the people.
They have, because they are bought and sold by the Democratic Party. And there's a reason for that. It's not just the Democrats. And when I say Democrats, I don't mean about the everyday people Democrats. I'm talking about the Democrats in Congress, the people who have the control, the globalists, the progressives. And, you know, there's a reason that all of this is happening. And it doesn't have to do it with so much that, oh, well, we just don't like this president. It's about globalism and elitism. It's about these people on the Democrat side in Congress wanting to get control again, to get this nationalist out of here, to get this person who is not in step with what we want, meaning the Democrats want for this country. And I want to talk about that a little bit. Veronica said, we pray for Trump. God will have the final say, but we need to keep praying. Love from South Africa. Good to see you, Veronica. And thank you. Kathy says, half-truths are completely deceptive. And they really are. But there's more to this. And this is the part I want to really get into and talk to you about, because I don't think we're talking enough about it. And used to, when we would say, socialists, nobody would want to admit that they're a socialist, and you really didn't talk about it. Now we kind of go, well, they're socialists because they've come out and said we're socialists. Well, I want to tell you today that they're not socialists, they're communists. And they're the progressives and communists are basically the same. And I want to talk about a little bit about that and some of the research that I've done, because I think this is so important for people to know. There's the Communist Party. I want to talk a little bit about what they like and what they don't like. They hate capitalism. We all know that, right? They love government control. And see what, as I go through these points, if this sounds really familiar to everybody, because we're hearing this a lot. They call for nationalization of the banks, railroads, and industries like the auto and steel, and support a socialist Bill of Rights. And that states that everyone should be guaranteed a job or given unemployment until a job is found. Now, that sounds exactly like what's coming from the socialists. They call themselves socialists, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Same stuff. They are absolutely for and supported Obamacare. They're for a national, type of nationalized industries, including the healthcare. They want income equality. And I don't mean, oh, we all know that people have differences. No, they want income equality. They want, if you've got more than me, then you need to give up what you have so you can come and be on the exact same level that I am. They want to tax the wealthy. They hate the wealthy and corporations.
All right. Well, I guess
the debates with the Democrats.
Hey, we kind of lost you there for just a split second.
Sorry.
Just go back and repeat what you just said in the last few sentences. I'm sorry.
Was it about healthcare, or did you hear that part?
We heard that part. It was just the last couple of sentences. You just you froze up on us.
that was the communists freezing me. No, I was going to say they're also for income equality, meaning if you have more money than me, we've got to take away from you to give to me so that we're equal, right? They want to tax the wealthy and the corporations. They absolutely always talk about taxing the rich. How many times do we hear we have to tax the rich? They feel that the government is the only one that creates the jobs. It's not the private industry. It's not President Trump
you didn't build this, right?
Yeah, you didn't build this. How long did we hear that? And it can't be that this president is doing anything to lower the unemployment of blacks and Hispanics, women, everybody else. No, that's only government can do that. So he's doing something they absolutely don't want him to do.
Well, what he's done is he's removed the restrictions that other administrations have imposed upon businesses. He's removed those restrictions so that those businesses could do what they do, so that the sole proprietorships could do what they do. And that is to create jobs from the ground up, and
lasting ones.
Right, and to unleash, what happens when you have a free and a capitalist society, in the sense that, free market. So that's what the president has done. What the others, what the previous administration did was to restrain all of that, which I don't want to interrupt your flow, but I do have something I want to say on that as it relates to the spiritual aspect of things. And, go back to Obama. When he first came out, and I certainly wasn't the only one. I know that you had some things to say on it as well. But I said from the get-go, this guy's a Marxist. This is what he is, which is just another way of saying a communist. And he proved that to be true as far as his policies, even while he's claiming to be a Christian. To me, the issue wasn't whether he was a Muslim or a Christian. The issue was that he was a Marxist.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he inherited more from his white mother, philosophically, as far as I'm concerned, than he did his black father. Because everybody said, well, you can't talk about him because he's black. Hey, wait a minute, he's half white.
Mm-hmm.
He's half white, and he learned more from her apparently than he did from the father he really didn't know. So in that regard, Obama, not black and white, mind you, but Obama was mixed. He was mingled. He was hot and cold that became lukewarm, philosophically and as it relates to spiritual things. I'm not talking about black and white. I'm talking about his mindset, okay? And so his administration began to impose that, and we're still dealing with it. Now, he didn't invent it. I understand that. He didn't initiate it in this country. He just amplified it. He just gave it, he gave it a place to really take root and grow at an alarming rate. And now you've got Trump coming in and his administration trying to, roll back some of those things that the Obama administration unleashed. So here's where I was going with this. In the parable of the wheat and the tare, and I don't get into all the particulars about it, but there is a very important concept, and that is that when the tares are sown in the midst of the wheat, biblically speaking, the intent is the tares are there to restrict the growth of the wheat. Okay? To restrict, to restrain the growth of the wheat. The adversary comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So what I'm getting at is that's what Obama's policies really were, to restrain the wheat from filling up the field. And so it'd be, the tares would overcome it. They would steal the nutrients. They would kill the plants. They would destroy the purpose of the wheat field. All right. So in a sense, what the Trump administration is doing is kind of uprooting some of that's restrained, if you will, and restricted. And so now it's beginning to grow. It's beginning to flourish. And the tares are screaming their heads off about it. So that's what we've got. I know it's apples and oranges, and the Messiah was talking about completely different things in one way, but that's the concept. The adversary and his minions restrain and restrict. The kingdom of heaven is designed to expand, to be on the move, to be a force that's not stagnant, And again, I realize it's apples and oranges, but the concept applies.
No, absolutely. And Marlene said, I'm so glad that you're calling it what it is, which is communism. Greg was agreeing with her on that too. Jimmy said, enjoy the program. Kathy said, no problem with equal work gets equal pay, but what they want is so much more than that. Not okay. Fundamentally change America, Linda said, and that's Obama did fundamentally change America.
He did.
And we're trying to crawl our way back up. I don't know if we can. Oregon Patriot said, I pray justice is coming to Obama. Cheryl said, the Holy Spirit gave me a word about Obama, which is Antichrist spirit. Jesus came as a servant. His yoke is easy. His burden is light. Ozzie Nick said, lockstep with the restrained from the beginning, Alan said. And, other things I wanted to say too, was that, we have all these entitlement programs that we always hear them talking about, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar and all that. Communist Party believes that the government should ensure that no citizen ever has a need. But, what happens is that you become solely dependent upon the government. And as we saw, that's what Obama wanted, get all these, get your Obama phone and everything else, and Nancy's even talked about that. And there is a socialist bill of rights would ensure the freedom from unemployment, from poverty, from illiteracy, from discrimination and oppression, the right to vote, to health care, to a job at a living wage, to decent housing, and so forth, free education through the college level. This is communism, and we've heard Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez just talking about that. Now, one of the things that I've been doing for the last couple of days, I ordered this book. I'm going to show you what it is. We can get a picture of this. It's called Dark Agenda. I don't know if we can see that pretty well.
I can see the title, don't see the author.
David Horowitz.
Okay.
And this is called The War to Destroy Christian America by David Horowitz, who is a conservative. One thing about him, that he used to be an atheist. He was in, the horrible times back in the 60s. I think he's more of an agnostic now. He's not a Christian. But this whole book is written about why they're coming after the Christians, they meaning the communists and the people that call themselves progressives. One of the things that progressives look at everything and say, and the communists, I'll just say communists from now on, that people are naturally good, but society leads them down paths that are bad. So because there's been this social injustice, is their point of view, against you, you can do things like, let's see, have a hearing where there are no rules that are fair and just, that type of thing. You could commit a crime because it was necessary to get you to have, because of all the horrible things that were happening to you. That's how you get social justice, by committing crimes. I mean, we sometimes look at the left and go, how do they believe this stuff? How is it okay for Antifa, for example? Why is that okay? And they look at it as they're correcting a social injustice. So it's okay.
The end justifies the means.
Yes. And that's a horrible thing. And, Christians look at things as that people are born, they're kind of inherently evil, right? And God, their choice in bringing them to God and coming to God and choosing God makes them, better.
That's why we have to be born again.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, let me just interject real quick. The
Yeah.
founders agreed with that. The founders agreed that men are inherently evil and can't be trusted, and that's why they developed the system of government that we have, where there are checks and balances, because no one entity, even the people, no one entity could be given the sole right to power.
Yeah. Wow. Now, progressives also believe that if human beings can be made to pursue lives that are politically correct, they can bring about a world of social justice. And that's why that political correctness, that loss of free speech that we have is so pushed, because that is a communist way of looking at things. Also, that's why they I think I said that, why they defend criminals. Now, here's what I want to tell you that I think we've forgotten about. And I know that I had kind of forgotten about it. I started going back and doing more research on it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's like it's all really coming together even more clearly. We have in our own Congress what is called the Congressional Progressive Caucus. It consists of one United States senator and 78 members of the United States House of Representatives. It's the largest caucus within the House Democratic Caucus. In other words, they're called progressives, and you may want to continue to call them that, but these are the people that have this ideology that I've just read to you. And this is the largest caucus we have in Congress.
If that is not the present state of the Democratic Party, it's certainly the future.
It's where it's headed.
Yeah.
Now, the caucus members promote a strong progressive agenda, and what's called the Progressive Promise, which is fairness for all. They have 4 core principles of the Progressive Promise, and I'll just kind of briefly tell you what they are. Fighting for economic justice and security for all, protecting and preserving our civil rights and civil liberties, promoting global peace and security, and advancing environmental protection and energy independence. Now, some of that sounds pretty good. It's like, yeah, of course, you kind of, you want them to civil rights and all that's great. When you start looking at, I'm just going to look at 1 or 2. Fighting for economic justice and security in the U.S. and global economies. What does that mean to them? To uphold the right to universal access to affordable, high-quality health care for all. Sound like communism? To preserve guaranteed Social Security benefits for all Americans, protect private pensions, require corporate accountability. There's that hate against corporations. To invest in America and create new jobs in the U.S. by building more affordable housing, rebuilding America's schools. They've done a good job at that, and inside and out. Physical infrastructure, cleaning up our environment and improving homeland security. To export more American products and not more American jobs, and demand fair trade. To reaffirm freedom of association and enforce the right to organize. To ensure working families can live above the poverty line and with dignity. They also, one of the core beliefs is advancing environmental protection and energy independence. Renewable energy is part of that. Cleansing our environment. Promoting environmental justice, whatever that means. Healthy environment, clean air, clean water. Speed commercialization of solar, biomass, wind power generation. Link clean energy to job creation. Convert domestic assembly lines to global competitiveness, and invest in construction of green buildings. Did this sound like communism to anybody other than me?
It sounds like everything Obama was trying to implement during his 8-year tenure. And by the way, many of those green companies that they got behind and all of that kind of stuff went belly up and bankrupt. Here's what I'm hearing you say, and this is maybe going to sound like it's coming out of left field, but here's what I hear. In Egypt, before Israel was enslaved to Pharaoh, the people of Egypt went to Pharaoh, basically, and said, if you'll take care of us, we'll sell ourselves to you. We'll become your servants. And what these people are saying, these communists, these Marxists, these socialists, these progressives, these whatever you want to call them.
In our Congress, let's not forget.
Right.
Yeah.
They're saying that the government is the answer to everything.
Mm-hmm.
You look to us, you swear your loyalty to us, you put us in power, and we'll make sure you have all of the leeks and melons and garlic and cucumbers and fresh fish that you can eat. We'll decide when you get it, and, where it comes from and all those kinds of things. You have to give your loyalty to us. And by the way, those things came from the Bible. That's why I quoted those things. And eventually what this leads to is that the government will see that God's people are troublemakers. They're the ones that are the threat. And then they will take measures to try to bring God's people under their control as well. So that's what I hear you say when we're talking about these things. So anyway, it seems to me that we're having a repeat of what's going on, what went on many millennia ago. And history always repeats itself, or the historical patterns repeat themselves. And I'm certain that Susan's going to be joining us back in just a moment. Not sure what happened there, but hopefully she'll be joining us in just a moment. But this is what, when Susan was talking about these people that are in Congress are moving in this direction. It's only a matter of time before Susan, what you were just describing in the Congress, this caucus, before that becomes the Democratic Party. And the danger beyond that is that if that is the future of the Democratic Party, then potentially it's also the future of the United States.
Absolutely. And somebody had asked, they didn't hear what I said, which caucus this was. This is the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And again, this is the largest caucus in Congress. They go on, and what they believe in is that you can see Agenda 21, 2030 agenda. It's all there. I want to tell you a little bit about the scariest part of all of this, about a Congressional Progressive Caucus. And I want Brandon to show this. This is show all the incumbents as I say this, if you can, that these people that you're looking at. How many times have we talked on this program about the the Justice Democrats? Remember justicedemocrats.com. These are the people that helped Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez get elected. These are the people that helped Ilhan Omar get elected. All of these individuals that you see, every single last one of their incumbents is a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Everyone. And for the Justice Democrats, what they're about is they say it's time to usher in a new generation of diverse working class Democrats, a party to fight for voters, not corporate donors. Again, that whole communist type attitude. In the area of Donald Trump and his billionaire cabinet, we will fight for an America that belongs to all of its people. Now, all of these people, Pramila Jayapal, Raul Grijalva, Ro Kahane, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Presley, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Every single one of them who is an incumbent in the Justice Democrats is also a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. One of them, Jayapal, her last name, she's a co-chair. Raul Grijalva is the chairman. He's like an honorary chairman. The other person, Ro Kahane, is the first vice chair. So they're all kind of in prominent positions. Bernie Sanders is the senator that we have.
Oh,
Ilhan, yeah, I know. Ilhan Omar is the whip. Rashida Tlaib is the special order hour convener, so she's heavily involved. And I want to mention a couple more names that aren't of the people who are in the Justice Democrats, but those that you will recognize who are in here. Sheila Jackson Lee is the vice chair. Steve Cohen from Tennessee.
I'm trying my best to get Arkansas to take him.
I'm telling you.
They don't want him, but I'm trying.
The late Elijah Cummings was involved, and Jerry Nadler, Maxine Waters, Ted Lieu, Carolyn Maloney, and the other person, everybody's little sweetheart that they've been talking about lately, and this is a person that I warned you about. I didn't know this until I did research. Tulsi Gabbard is also a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus.
Well, again, this certainly seems to be the future of the Democratic Party.
Absolutely is.
And if they ever get control, if they ever get power, then Americans have never seen oppression. Under the guise of we're helping you. We're going to make your lives better. We're just going to tell you what you can do and what you can't do.
Look at how many people are involved. How many 78 Democrats are in this caucus, and names that we recognize like Jerry Nadler and Steve Cohen, who have had an impact. Sheila Jackson Lee has had an impact. Maxine Waters has had an impact. All of these people right now are impacting our votes as United States citizens, trying to take away by impeaching a president, a duly elected president that we voted. And Katrina said, can we stop calling them Democrats? Yeah, I mean, we might as well. They're communists. I mean, and I say that, and I know, again, we're not supposed to say communism. We're not supposed to talk about it. But you know what? It's the truth. And I'm gonna stop calling them progressives or socialists. They are communists. If you go back and listen back to what I just said about what communists believe, these people are spouting the exact same thing.
Well, there was a day and time not too long ago when communist was a dirty word.
Yeah.
Socialist was a dirty word.
Right.
Really. But now there are people who pride themselves on being socialists or communists and Marxists, and there are people who march in the streets of Portland who shout and chant, no borders, no wall, no United States at all.
Yes,
and the mayor of Portland lets these people, seemingly anyway, run free without any kind of fear of any kind of retribution if they step out of line. So this is what's going on in this nation, and the person fears for my children and for my grandchildren and what kind of a country that they are going to be left with. And at the same time, that spiritual side says, these are the things that the Messiah said, when you see them start to happen, we are to look up, lift up our heads. We know that our redemption is at hand. I mean, and that's something to be hopeful for, but at the same time, we need to be aware that there's a lot of stuff to go through to get to that. And so we, as his people, we are cognizant of these things. We need to warn people and alert people of these things. The watchman on the wall, when he sees the sword coming, he is obligated to let everyone know. And if people don't pay attention, well, that's on them. But if he doesn't sound the alarm, then their blood is on his hands. And so one of the things that we try to do in this program, Susan, is to sound the alarm like you're doing right now. And to make people aware, here's what's going on right under your nose, some of it is. And realize that the sword is coming, metaphorically speaking, if not literally.
No, it is. I mean, the impeachment inquiry is part of the sword, don't you think? I mean, it is an attack to, as Obama promised to do, fundamentally transform this nation into something that was never supposed to be, never intended to be anyway. And to something that Marxists like Obama and his Confederates and Rashida Tlaib and you mentioned Steve Cohen and Jackson Lee and some of these people. Now, Bill's opinion, they're signing on to this because they see that that's the wave of the future, and they have no principles, so they're going to go whichever way the wind's blowing. But those people that you put up their faces on the screen, those are the people who actually believe this stuff. That's who and what they are. They're gonna pick up the Steve Cohens, along the way. Do you understand? That's why they got elected. Yeah. That's why they got elected. That's the only reason they ran, because they wanted to. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the very beginning said, "We want to change the Democrat Party." She said it, and people have forgotten. She meant it. And it was to change it to communism. And they are step by step. I mean, looking at what we're seeing in this inquiry and impeachment inquiry and what the hearings are going to be, you're looking at communism, pure and simple. That's what you're seeing.
Well, the people in this nation have someone who is, like him or not, agree with him on everything or not, there is somebody in the Oval Office, thankfully, right now, who is speaking up about these things and who is resisting this trend. And that should both indict people who say they care about this country, who have done nothing, who've said nothing, who have just kind of twiddled their thumbs and watched this all happen. It should indict those to do something, and it should inspire others to continue to fight and to speak up and to resist and to ultimately contend for the kingdom of heaven, for what is right, what is pure, what is holy, what is sacred. And to do that doesn't mean that we abandon fighting for this nation. It just means that if we fight for all the right things, namely the kingdom of heaven, how can this nation not benefit from that?
Right.
And I think it was Lincoln who was, somebody asked him one time, whose side do you think God's on, the North or the South? And he said, that's really not the question, to find out which side he's on. What we need to be asking is, are we on his side? So that's where we need to be in this fight too, because we're in just as big a civil war as he was back in those days. It hasn't come to armies meeting on conventional battlefields necessarily, but nevertheless, we're in a fight for the survival of this nation.
Well, Katrina also says, what about the rhinos? And while they're not in that caucus because it's for, Democrats, there are rhinos that I believe right now are not helping this president. Absolutely. Because they agree with the agenda on the left. And so that's, they're Republicans in name only. That's what rhinos mean.
Right. So. I was going to ask you, actually, if there were any Republicans that were part of this particular caucus. I wouldn't be surprised if there weren't. Or were.
Shouldn't be. It's supposed to be all 78 Democrats, but I'm sure they would love. I mean, I could see Romney going over there, sitting in on some meetings. So I don't know, but I think people, they need to see what's coming in, and they need to remember what has been said. And I wanted to bring this all up today because I think people have forgotten. About the caucus in Congress, what was there, what they said. And as we come, into what's coming up this week and on, you can see why it's bigger than just, we don't like this president. There's a whole, society structure, whatever you want to call it, behind all of this. And we're just now kind of seeing it, starting to see it.
As we talk about this, I'm just having these memories, from the past pop up in my mind. Things my dad used to spout off about, and things that he used to be, and at the time I thought, obsessive about. And and it was about resisting communism and these people who had these communistic views. And I used to, oh, come on, Dad. And he said back then, I mean, this is 30, 40 years ago, he said, here's what's going to happen, and this is how it's going to develop, and then eventually it's going to be, a conflict. And I used to think, oh, man, get off of it. But, but now I'm like, gosh, they saw it way back then, or some people saw it way back then, and it's materializing in our day and time now. And so, it's like Mark Twain said, when I was 16, I thought my old man was pretty dumb, but by the time I turned 21, I was amazed at how much he'd learned in just 5 years. So.
Well, and it is so true, though. I mean, all of this stuff, it likens back to the frog that's sitting in the water, and the frog doesn't realize the water's getting hotter and hotter. And then when the frog does realize it's too late, the water is boiling. Yeah. I think that's where we are in America, honestly. We're in that tepid water right now. It's starting to heat up, and we're trying to put it all together.
I think it's starting to boil. I'm ready to get out.
Yeah, exactly. Me too. Julie said there is an agenda. Nona said, I was born and raised during the Soviet Union. Janice said, same here, Bill. God help us, Nona said, who was born and raised in the Soviet Union. And they want to start a civil war, Jonathan said. I think they don't care if there is a civil war. Like if that's what it takes, if that's what, for them to get back in control and to change this country once and for all away from God, Christian principles, and anything that we're familiar with in this world, in this country, I think they're willing to do it. I think if you look and see the lawlessness that is going on with these hearings in the impeachment inquiry, that's just a little taste of the bigger thing that they're willing to do. And I absolutely say that now, and really am convicted about that and really believe that.
Well, here's what we have. Here's why they are so successful and why they go so far so fast. It's because the tares have an aggressive nature. The tares are never going to be content to stay in their own field. They do not have a live and let live worldview. They have a, you need to do what I say, and then you need to conform to how I think.
Right.
The wheat, if I can use that terminology, has a, generally speaking, a live and let live worldview. You know, I'm going to live my way. You know, I don't agree with your way, but if that's how you're going to live, you know, I guess that's your business. I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to try to, you know, raise my family and try to, you know, raise them in the right way, and hopefully in a biblical way, in a way that, you know, puts God first and everything. If given the opportunity to share that with you, I will, but, you know, I'm not going to force it on you. And that's what, you know, they use that against us, because they don't have that worldview. They don't have that way of thinking. They are aggressive, and the adversary comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So you're right. I don't think they care one way or the other. If we lay down, they'll take that. If we stand up, they'll go to war. Usually what happens is there's somewhere down the line, the tares cross the line, and the wheat say, that's enough. And then there's a fight.
And let me say, we're going over a couple of minutes, so some people are looking at the time and thinking that we're leaving. We're not, so stay with us. So stay with us. We have a few more minutes to go. But yes, and Marie said, yes, my way or the highway is their way. And Janice said, they serve a master we do not acknowledge. He roams the earth. And that's why Christians do need to stand up. They need to push back, and with the truth, and not lay down and be quiet and be silent. And that means at the ballot box as well. Mike said, as we as Republicans, we need to become more organized in our fight for our nation and pray more. We need to become more proactive as Republicans. We absolutely need to pray more. And the Republicans that we have in Congress, again, because we do have rhinos, not everybody is for us, and we have to remember that. Tim said they don't want a civil war, but they won't. They don't want a civil war, but that won't stop them. Yeah, they don't necessarily want it, but they're willing to like bring it on if that's what you want to do, because we want to win this. And I think we have to just be cognizant of the fact that, you know, if we pull off the election, which, you know, pray to God we do, if that's his will, and and Trump is reelected, we've got to get the House and we've got to get the Senate. You know, we really do need to get out there and get that House and Senate back, or we're going to have another 4 years where there's obstruction after obstruction. And even if we get that, it's not going to be smooth sailing. No. These people aren't going to stop. They have an agenda.
I want to say something, and I hope people won't run with this too far. What we see going on in this nation is just a microcosm of what's going on in the world, and that is that there is this other seed. I've used the terminology wheat and tare, so the tares. That is that other plant that the adversary, you know, he sows the seed. It's his word, his philosophy, his worldview, and then people take up that mantra. They take up the cause, so to speak, whether it's Marxism, communism, atheism, what have you. All it is that they want to stamp out what's good, the wheat, all right?
Yes.
They're not going to go away regardless of who's in office. Exactly. How many conservatives are in the Congress? They're not going to go away. They're not going to lay down. They're not going to go away without a fight. So obviously there's limits to what we can do and should do in this fight. You know, we have to stay within the moral boundaries, legal boundaries, mind you. And that's why we need to say Maranatha.
Yes.
Because only then, really only then, does this issue get resolved once and for all.
Yes.
This is where we're at in the world, in the history of the world. We're going to have this fight every day of our lives. It's just going to be a lot harder if we sit down, lay down, and let them dictate terms.
And it's like Jonathan said, the only way for evil to exist is for good people to do nothing. I think that was Bonhoeffer who actually said that, as I remember. But and Katrina said, "Yes, come, Lord Jesus, come quickly." Absolutely. It's a different time and a different world than we live in right now. For whatever reason, God is exposing everything, all what you call it, deep state, call it evil, call it whatever. I believe, we're in the end times. These things are getting exposed, and they're not going to go back down in some hole, some place, the pit that they came out of.
No.
It's here, and it's going to get worse according to what's written in the Bible.
To the contrary, I mean, as opposed to getting better, it's going to get worse, as you said, because Hebrews 12 talks about how God's going to shake everything, heaven and earth, to demonstrate what can stand and what shouldn't stand. And then in Revelation, there's these spirits that have been held captive, so to speak, that he is going to allow to be unleashed on the world. He's going to allow them to go out into the world and see who they can deceive.
Right.
Some people would even argue that we're there in that time. I don't know one way or the other, but that's what we're looking at. So we need to be involved. We need to be proactive, as you said. We need to participate in the process, but we can't think that that's the only avenue, and we can't think that if we get Trump reelected or if we take back Congress, that resolves our problems. It doesn't.
It
doesn't.
No.
So this is a fight that we're going to be in till the day we take our last breath.
Exactly. Nona said Ezekiel 38 is unfolding. Kim said, besides praying, how do you fight back when they change the laws? We know, Kim, in the end times, that's going to be happen. Up is going to be down, down's going to be up. I mean, that's the way it is. So you have to remember God's principles and God's principles in the Bible. Not life, this world is not fair. And you're not going to find fairness here. No. And you have to just know that you have to act as God would have you act and not as they act. And that's not always going to come out looking great for us.
Well, we also need to understand that sometimes fighting back is just not bowing.
Yes.
It's not necessarily taking up arms, but it's just not bowing. Go read Daniel chapter 3, the story we've heard about all of our lives, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Here's how they fought back. They didn't bow down. Right. They said, no, we're not going to do that. And we see that God delivered them and actually provoked the most powerful man on earth to profess that their God was God. So what I was going to say was this. They didn't get that way overnight. They didn't just decide that that's the kind of people they were going to be overnight. That was the culmination of a lifetime of making choices not to bow down to the gods of men, not to bow down to the whims of men. So that's how we fight back. That's one way we do, and I would say that's the most important way that we fight back.
And putting on the full armor of God.
Yes.
And that's what we have to do. And let's see, Kathy said, if we sit down, lay down, and let them walk all over us, then we deserve what we get. We need to, like you stand up. Yeah. Jana said, we're not popular in many situations. Marie said, we have to look at the long range. That's what conservative Christians have not done. Absolutely, we need to continue going until our last breath.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do.
That's what we got to do. I mean, I know that we know that, but I think that sometimes we can get seduced by the hope that if we just do this and if we just do that, then we'll win this thing. No,
right.
We win this thing when we stand before him and hear him say, well done, good and faithful servant. That's when we win.
Now, in our final little topic, and we won't spend very much time on it, but I wanted everybody to be aware of the fact, Iran is starting to make moves. I mean, they're pouring concrete, to get into their nuclear plant. They want a second nuclear plant. They've increased how much they're doing. Pompeo is fighting against it. The Middle East is in trouble. the world's in trouble. How long before Iran does all of this, and then Iran goes in and attacks Israel? I mean, they're building this. They say, oh, we just need this for our people, for they need to be warm or whatever. If you believe that, I got some swampland that you can build some good buildings on if you'd like. But it's all coming together. It's all working. One of the things, we heard last week how that whole family down in Mexico, that Mormon family, an offshoot of the Mormon faith, was killed by the drug cartels down there. What I guess nobody's really paying attention to, again, because we're so involved with this farce going on in the impeachment, and that's where they want our attention to be. But Iran, through its proxy Hezbollah, are going out and hiring the drug cartel down in Mexico to do drug smuggling, human trafficking, all that. Did anybody know that? Did anybody in mainstream media tell us that Iran basically is hiring the drug cartel to bring drugs into the U.S., human smuggling, and to do all kinds of crimes? Did anybody talk about it ever? No.
Well, back in I read this in the Reagan diaries. Several years ago, a gentleman compiled all of Reagan's diary entries. Mm-hmm. And in 1986, there's one entry where he had a meeting with Bill Casey, who was the CIA director at that time. This is, 33 years ago? And Bill Casey told Ronald Reagan that among those people who were coming across the southern border, among them were operatives from the Middle East. I don't recall they named any particular nation. My point here is this, though. This is a tactic that certain entities in the Middle East, no doubt Iran would be one of them, considering what happened right as Ronald Reagan comes into power, as president. But even then, these Middle Eastern nations that are antagonistic toward the United States and Israel were using, the porous southern border and that whole issue to use it against us, to exploit it. And so, no, I don't doubt it at all. That they've been doing this, and probably for a lot longer than we realize.
Mm-hmm. And if Brandon, if you have photo number 2, I just want to show you a familiar face. That's Hillary Clinton. As if anybody that knows about Uranium One, it was her State Department who basically gave 20% of our uranium to Russia, and it might just I don't know if you would know this or not, but that Rosatom was the name of the company, Rosatom, that was involved in Russia, and that's who turned out to be a very corrupt company and all that in Russia, and was connected with the State Department Uranium One deal, with 20% of our uranium going to Russia. Just so happens that Russia, Rosatom, they're helping Iran with their new nuclear sites. So,
earlier in this program, we talked about how there's probably no telling what these people that are trying to get Trump out of the way and try to, impose their worldview on the rest of us. There's no telling what they're all involved with.
Absolutely. We're seeing it all connecting and coming together. And, Christians, be aware. Christians, look up. And Christians, do what God is calling you to do, and don't lay down. Wake up and see all this. And if you will, please retweet this. Facebook is really cutting down on conservatives getting out their videos, their message, everything. So we're going to have to depend on you guys to get, you can retweet it from Periscope, YouTube, Facebook, get the message out so other Christians can see it. Yes, while we can. Absolutely. Because they're shutting us down. They really are. So, but I want to thank everybody. Your comments today, your questions, although I didn't get to every single one of them, they were amazing as always. I thank you so much for that. Everybody who's on the East Coast, Midwest, stay warm. And until next time, God bless you. Take care.
Bye-bye.